Okay, so hello everybody. I'm Ginger Bowler, a longtime student and teacher of Hanna Kroeger's work. I think I know everybody or mostly everybody who signed up for this webinar. So it is just in my heart lately to do a webinar on Hannah's work because I've been teaching her work now for 29 years, I think it is. I met Hanna back in 1987, and that meeting changed the course of my life, literally, because from the day I met her, or that weekend that I met her, it was Valentine's Day, Valentine's weekend of 1989. I started doing her work right away, and I've never stopped. Even though a lot of you all may know me from the biofeedback industry or from having owned Southern Herb Company or from the light therapy industry, I think everybody understands, if you've been in any of my classes, that I always talk about Hanna and Hanna's work, because Hanna's work is my foundation. It's how I came to understand the human being and the human body. Even though my undergraduate degree is in health and physical education, I did have some understanding of the mechanics and the physiology and the anatomy of the body. But it was through Hanna's teachings that I developed a profound respect for that we were much more than just our physical form. So I'm going to take this webinar from the point of view that you don't know anything about Hanna, even though I know most of you listening now live or on the recording probably know a lot about Hanna. So Hanna was known as many things, but the grandmother of health. She received an award from New Life magazine as one of the great holistic pioneers of the 20th century. Along with greats like Linus Pauling and Wigmore, Dr. Bach, Dr. Christopher, and Edgar Casey. So I thought she was a little saint. She certainly did things that saints do. A little bit about her background: she was a daughter of German missionaries. She was a master herbalist. And from Germany or from Europe, the way that they dealt with the herbal combinations, which she is very famous for her herbal combinations, is that they weren't just using the primary properties of all the herbs when they were combining. And they were using specific numbers of different types of herbs. And so she was not just using those primary properties, but she was considering the secondary and tertiary properties of the different herbs to make a blend that was very gentle to the body. So those of you all that have taken her herbal combinations over the years know that it's almost never that you have someone that has a healing crisis, of what we call a Herxheimer effect, which means you get worse before you get better. That's very unusual for Hanna's work because of the blending of the herbal combinations. And Hanna did not like us to produce that healing crisis that a lot of people say, well, oh, that's all you're having a healing crisis, it's going to be fine. Well, Hanna didn't like that. That wasn't part of her work, because she said if somebody went through a healing crisis, that they probably were not going to follow through with working on their bodies. So to avoid at all costs doing too much at one time, so that the person was having some sort of a healing crisis. The way that we do that is that we make sure that the kidneys are supported, the routes of detoxification. And this is a whole nother webinar, but just generally to making sure that the kidneys are functioning well. The liver has some support. The person can have bowel movements, etc. So we want to make sure that we have the routes of detoxification supported. And a lot of you all that have started working with Hanna's work or have for a long time, that it was very common that we would do something like the black radish and parsley herbal combination, or metal X for heavy metals, which tend to bother the kidneys as well, or the kidney, one of the kidney cleanses or kidney formulas. So, and that's because you really can't go wrong starting with the kidneys and supporting the kidneys. Now, I was telling my hairdresser when I was talking about that this was a webinar I was about to present. I said that the issue with me presenting Hanna's work in a 40-minute webinar is that on any one of these topics, I could speak for 40 minutes or 4 hours or 4 days maybe. So I'm just going to try to hit some hot spots and see if you all like it, if we have a demand for some for breaking it down and going deeper into Hanna's work with the other topics, then we'll schedule some more webinars. I did forget to say that, well, to do any kind of introduction for myself, because I'm assuming that if you're here on our website, you know who we are, but I'm Ginger Bowler, longtime student of Hanna Kroeger's work. I have a doctorate in energy medicine, and I've been teaching in the field for 31 years. Well, no, I think I said 29 years. I met Hanna 31 years ago. We're in Broomfield, Colorado. For all these, for many years, I've been at Hanna's retreat. When Hanna passed away, I actually did take over her teaching schedule and did that for a number of years. And then I had my own business, so I was back and forth a lot. Ended up getting a doctorate in energy medicine just to try to stay a little bit ahead of my students, who tend to be very smart. And so ended up moving to Colorado from Madison, Wisconsin, and before that from Florida. And I have been in Colorado for about 12 years now with my family. And we just recently moved from my office just recently moved in October from Peaceful Meadow Retreat to here in Broomfield. And we just needed a bigger office. We needed more space. And so here we are. The Peaceful Meadow Retreat is still there. It still has programs. And Hanna's Herb Shop is still Hanna's Herb Shop. The Kroger Herb is still the manufacturer of the herbal combinations. All of that is still the same. Okay, and we've simply moved into a bigger space. We still love them and love the products and love the work. Okay, so Hanna was a master herbalist. She was a homeopath. Her particular way of using homeopathics was more that she went to the vibrational remedies rather than the traditional or constitutional homeopathy. And what does that mean? She was using a dilution of 6X, meaning it's a very weak dilution that someone could drink a whole bottle and they're not going to hurt themselves. And it's the vibrational equal of the remedy. So she has a whole line of vibrational remedies and that we love and we count on. Hanna was also a nurse. She was a naturopathic physician in Germany back when she said that they would even let her operate. She was a minister, an author. She wrote 21 books. She was a teacher, a lecturer, a metaphysician. Metaphysician here, we're talking about, metaphysical being that which is not physical. Hanna could see angels, she could see little people, she could see nature spirits, she could see auras and energies, and she very commonly got angelic visitations and visits from Jesus, and she was a very spiritual human being, and she's the one I credit for. I say, Hanna gave me God. Well, I was that's true. And I was raised in a wonderful family, and we were raised Roman Catholic. I loved my upbringing. I went to Catholic school. I liked it that I knew about angels, and I had a guardian angel, and I would leave a little spot on my desk so she could sit with me. And we were fortunate that we got to know about the mystical. So I'm not making any religion wrong or right or whatever. It's just that's how I was raised. Hannah was raised in a Christian family and was a Christian minister, and yet, as I do, embraced all religious backgrounds. We believe, I believe that all paths lead to God. So one of the biggest things that, as long as we're going in the right direction, the biggest thing for Hannah is that everybody, including myself, would refer to her as a healer. And she never used the term healer about herself. She always said that all healing comes from God. And that, so if she participated somehow in that person's healing, then she was thrilled about that, but she wasn't going to take any credit whatsoever for it, except for having the knowledge to know how to point the person in the direction that might support their healing. And I think that's a good thing for us to remember, is that if somebody gets healed in our space, or because of our work, of course, it's not us that healed them. Their body. So I'm going to back up just a little bit so you're not reading the next screen. So two things. One is, yes, all healing comes from one source, that's God. And the other thing is that her famous quote, I should have put it up on the screen, but I didn't. We use this in all of our other classes, and we even have it in our light therapy certification course textbook. Hannah's quote, which is that the human body is the most brilliant computer that was ever designed. And there will never be a computer smarter than the human body. Given the proper information or encouragement, the body heals itself. So I'm going to say that one more time, because this is everything. It's everything. So the body, our body is the most brilliant computer ever designed. There will never be a computer smarter than the human body. Given the proper information or encouragement, the body heals itself. Okay, so with what she was using, herbs and homeopathics and body self-alignment and cement as the information that the body needed to heal itself. But ultimately, if the body heals itself, if the body gets healed, the body heals itself. And that is through that new information and the connection with its source. And I'm going to not keep qualifying it. I'm going to keep referring to that source as being God. And I don't mean to offend anybody's religious or spiritual beliefs. It's just, I'm going to teach this from my own understanding. And you can translate it into, some people want to say the universe or whatever. That's up to you. I'm going to take a little permission and call the source of all that is God. One of my friends, and some of you all know this because you've been in my classes, is that one of my friends one time called me. She's a Southerner. She was from Alabama. And she called me and she said, Ginger, honey, I'm trying to get more spiritual, honey, and I'm taking this class and everything, and they keep saying Jesus and God, and honey, it's so uncomfortable for me. I just call him Big Sweetie. You think there's any problem with that? And I just started laughing, and I'm like, no, I don't think there's any problem calling Big Sweetie Big Sweetie. So anyway, now the basis of Hannah's teachings was that she was able to take the 2,700 diseases or conditions known to modern medicine 30 years ago, there's probably more than that now, and put them into 7 easy to understand categories. The 7 physical causes of illness and the 7 spiritual causes. And if you'll look on the screen right now, you'll see that number 1 corresponds with number 1. So neglect in the physical form, physical body, corresponds with neglect in the spiritual. So neglect in the physical would be things like not drinking enough water, not getting enough exercise, spending too much time on the computer, things like that, that we're neglecting. Whereas in the spiritual, neglecting our spiritual life. What does that mean? It means different things for everybody. Number two, trauma in the physical. Very, very often that trauma is a physical trauma, like a whiplash, broken bone, lacerations, surgery, car accident. But probably even more often, it is an emotional trauma, like a divorce or a whatever, loss of a job, etc. So trauma in the physical corresponds to trauma in the spiritual. Give me a couple examples of trauma in the spiritual. Well, a very easy one is, how many people have been told that they're going to hell in the name of Jesus? That can make spiritual trauma right now. As I've worked with people over the last 30 years on their health and well-being, when it gets right down to it, when someone's not able to get well or doesn't get well or doesn't stay well, a lot of times whether it was doing a biofeedback session, or because I'm a biofeedback instructor also, and I have other modalities. Let me just say that I use light therapy, I use biofeedback, I use biogenesis, I use Hanna's work, I use anything that I can to help a person have a better life. But what I've noticed over all these years when I'm working with people is that if they don't get well or don't stay well, the bottom line is that they think that they've done something that's unforgivable to God. It comes right down to that. And so, that there's spiritual trauma that would also go to the spiritual congestion, where things are just not moving at all. But I tried to, well, let me just back up. When I taught my very first seminar in Hanna's work was back in 1989, I think. And it was in Louisiana. And I did a terrible job. It was miserable. I was awful. And I was living up here in Colorado, as a matter of fact, at the time. And so I came back to Hanna's place, and I went to her and I said, "Whew, I'm never doing that again." And she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And I said, "Teaching. I'm never teaching. I quit." I was terrible. And she said, "Oh, well, honey, I made a seminar for you in Evergreen, Colorado in 3 weeks." I'm like, no. I stink. I'm not teaching. I said, Evergreen's 30 minutes down the road. I said, "Hanna, they don't want me. They want you." She goes, "No, I already told them." I said, no. I'm going to come over. I'm going to pick you up. I'll drive you to Evergreen. I'll help you with the seminar. I'm not doing this. I'm bad at this. And so she said, "Well, my husband's sick, and I told him you were coming." And so for the next 3 weeks, I prepared. And there was another teacher with Hanna's work that was at the retreat, and he helped me put a manual together. We didn't have any kind of manual or anything. The day before the seminar, I was so nervous. I went over to Hanna's, and I just was, "Hanna, what if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer to it?" She says, "Well, honey, tell them you don't know." And I'm like, oh, it never dawned on me that I could say I didn't know something. And then as dowsers, we would check people over products. I said, "Well, what if I tell them they need a supplement that they don't really need?" And she said, "Oh, honey, so you cleaned out an organ that doesn't need it. So what?" And I'm like, okay, well, that's true. And but she said to me, "But honey, don't talk about God." And I'm like, huh? How in the world do you teach a Hanna seminar or any seminar on healing and not acknowledge the source of everything? And so I really thought about it, and I was really going to try to do that, because I had learned that the person who introduced me to Hanna had told me, now, anytime Hanna tells you something, you should do it, because she's a master teacher. And even if she's throwing something at you, you should just let it go, because she's always teaching you. And I had found that that was true. So I went to Evergreen. I stood up in front of this nice big group of people, and I attempted to deliver a Hanna Kroeger seminar without mentioning the name of God, and our Hanna Kroeger seminar on healing and health. And so I got all the way through the introduction, and I realized, which was about 1 minute, I realized that there was no way that I could present this work authentically if I did not acknowledge God. So I realized that my beautiful teacher was trying to see if I could use my own discernment, and I did. And so that's why I'm saying, I'm going to keep talking about God anytime I'm talking about healing and health. Okay, so cause number 3 in the physical is congestion. So congestion would be things like gallstones, kidney stones, arterial congestion, and Hannah's number 1 product for arterial congestion is Circuflow. So she's got some very specific products for specific conditions that would support that system. But we can have spiritual congestion, such as, I know everything, I know how it all works, and if you should believe like I believe, and if you don't believe like I believe, then you're wrong. Okay, well, that's spiritual. That can be spiritual congestion. So cause number 4, chemical, metals, and environmental toxins. I think everybody these days is aware of how much toxicity we have in our environment. And but what we don't want to make you afraid of your environment. So how do you deal with the toxicity and still live a happy life? Okay, so one of the things is to make sure that your body is handling the detoxing and that you're not exposing yourself more than you need to. But there's so many easy ways to avoid chemicals. So in a future webinar, we'll be talking more about that. Corresponding in the 7 spiritual causes to chemical, metal, and environmental toxins is karma. And maybe not in karma in the way that a lot of people think of it, but that we are bound by our own, we are bound at the level of our own judgments. So if we're judging someone for anything, so we're judging them for being, an idiot, then we're probably being an idiot. So we're bound at that level. But also more in that what we put out in the world comes back to us. If we're planting a harvest, we're planting a field. If we're planting corn, we're not going to get beans. Okay, we're going to get corn. So if we're planting goodness and kindness and love and compassion and things like that, fun and acceptance, that's what we're going to end up getting back. So that's what that one means. In the 7 physical causes, number 5, worms and parasites. I think everybody listening to this webinar pretty much knows that human beings can get worms and parasites, and it's actually very common. But our brilliant body is designed to throw that parasitic infection right out as long as it's in a healthy state. And if it's not, and we do pick up a parasitic infection, then it can cause certain conditions. Now, fortunately, Hanna has wonderful products for parasite cleansing. In the spiritual, it corresponds to entities and dark forces and negativity. What does that mean? It means if someone has a lot of let's say that you're working with someone and they keep coming up with worms and parasites and things like that, we might be looking to the fact that spiritually they need to be cleared energetically. Number 6 in the physical, infectious conditions, infectious diseases correspond, well, we know everything from the different hepatitis to cancer, fibromyalgia, arthritis. These are the Epstein-Barr, chronic fatigue. Oh, we could go on 2,700 more names. Anyway, these are the examples, but corresponding to emotions being out of balance. What does that mean? It means that we can work with the emotional body and clear up stuff in the physical body. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And number 7 cause of illness, according to Hanna, is miasms. Miasms are those carried over issues from our ancestors. So if they had tuberculosis, we may have scoliosis or hammer toes. So it doesn't pass down to the next generation usually as the same condition. And that corresponds in the spiritual body with faith or the lack thereof of faith. In the Bible, it says, by your faith you were healed. And it also talks a lot about belief. So all of this was very, very important to the healing process. So what did Hanna know for sure? She knew, as I said earlier, that all healing comes from one source, and that source is God. So how do we tap into that source? Well, there are many different ways. Prayer, singing, chanting, meditation, praising God, music, helping other people, doing, thinking, speaking about things that are in the higher vibrations of light. Some of you all have taken my Understanding Energy webinar. I did recently record it, and it's available on our website, energyevents.us. And if you're not familiar with that very simple energy model, I do think that it helps, no matter what modality you're using, that it helps us to understand energy and how to manage ourselves as energetic beings. Anyway, go have a look at that. So love and gratitude, all those the positive emotions are things that help us to tap into source. I know yesterday I was driving across Denver at sunset, or not sunset, well, it was starting late afternoon, I should say. And I didn't have the radio on, and I just had delivered a light therapy device to someone. And I was driving back across Denver, and the sun was coming in my window. And I just stopped. Well, I was driving, but I just wanted to take in my gratitude for feeling so good, and the sun, and that the traffic was moving beautifully, and that I felt good, and that my children are happy, and things like that. So all of those things that put us in a state of gratitude helps us to access our own healing. And so that's it. So all of the virtues help us to tap into source. And then, quite literally, Hanna used a little dowsing device, a pendulum. I'll put it against the black background so you can see it. Now, we used a stainless steel pendulum. Some people call it, in the Bible, it's called a divining rod. It's the same principle, a pendulum, and a lot of you all are dowsers already. But this was, Hanna considered it like a little telephone to God. Hello, God, what should I do? And so this is not, she wasn't asking the pendulum what the answer was. She was asking God for an answer and using the pendulum to give the answer. So a dowsing class, maybe in your future, if you haven't yet taken a class like that. So dowsing is the measurement of subtle energies using a tool. You can use, when I was in grade school, we used a needle on a needle and a thread, and we would use it to see how many babies you're going to have. It's the same principle. It's just a measurement of energy. And if you think of it as a telephone, and you ask a question and you know what your yes and no answers are, then you can see that it's just another way to get information. The challenge with dowsing is to get your own mind out of the way so that you're literally getting the information. Now, I didn't put a photograph on the screen in this presentation, but I didn't put a slide, I should say. But Hanna always talked about the crown chakra. So the chakras are energy systems throughout the body, throughout the energetic body, and they correspond with organs and systems systems of the body. And as a reminder, for those of you all longtime students of Hannah's work, and for those of you all just beginning, Hanna would talked about the crown needs to be open, the crown chakra, the pineal gland. So the pineal gland is a little gland in the center of the brain. And for many, many, many centuries, I guess, medical science didn't know what the pineal gland was for. But they knew that if they took it out, you died. Well, Hanna said, this is our connection to God. And so it's, very sacred, and it's buried right in the middle of the brain. And that this needs to be open. If you think about, so the crown chakra corresponding with that gland needs to be open, because then, and I'm going to try to get better in the camera, so the light comes through the top of the head and activates the whole system. And if you think when a baby's born, those cranium bones are open, right? And so they're totally still connected to God through their head. So that light comes in and it activates the entire body and the energy systems and the glands, organs and glands. So Hanna would always tell us that if a person repeatedly gets sick, and you get them well and they get sick and get well, to check to make sure that this chakra was open, that this connection, the pineal, was open. And how do you do that? You simply can command it. So we would say, pineal, I'm talking to you in Jesus' name, open, 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 and stay open. And see, for some of you all watching this, you may have felt that. Because if yours needed to be open just by the command and the power of the spoken word, which was a big part of Hanna's teaching, and the Bible tells us, power of the spoken word all over the place, and our ability to command things and the authority that we have. So again, I'll do it for anybody watching on the recording or right now. And if you would like your pineal open, I'll do it. I'll proxy for all of you. Also, we say, pineal, I'm talking to you in Jesus' name. Open, 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 and stay open. Okay, so that's a command, and I have authority to command things in his name. So, but the reason I'm talking about this right now is because if you're dowsing someone and you're dowsing in the crown chakra, there's no energy coming, then or the person, a lot of times they look like real ashen color, like gray, or not, like their lights are off. Well, that's usually an indication of a crown chakra that has been closed. And look how easy that it is just to command it. Now, we're really fortunate, those of us in the light therapy business, because a lot of times, let's face it, in the middle of your office, you're not going to be in Jesus' name, open, 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 and stay open, right? But you can we have the lights on the head, and we have a new, what we call a brilliant light cap, and you're flooding this area with so much light, and I see that people's get really open, putting the cap on, and you're only helping them because now they're connected again. They feel better. Their vibrancy comes back to their skin, and the whole game, I think, in life is get to the light. I mean, it's as simple as that. I truly believe that. So there are various ways that you can learn to use a pendulum. We're not going to learn it in this webinar. We don't have enough time, maybe in a future one. But plenty of people could teach you, or you could go to YouTube and find out. But the American Dowsing Society has a very simple technique that they use. It was different than Hanna's, but it still works. And so it's like the difference of, do you speak Spanish or French or German or Portuguese? Which one's the right language? Well, none of them are the right language. It's whatever language you understand, right? That's the same way with dowsing. So learn to douse. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the human energy field as a review. We borrowed this graphic. We gave credit at the bottom of the screen for where we got it. But it's a beautiful picture that shows us that on the physical plane, we see many, many layers of the being. We have the spiritual, the astral, and the physical plane. And in the physical plane, you can see that Further out from the body is the mental body. What does that mean? The thoughts that we're having. And then the next layer in is the emotional body. What does that mean? The emotions that we're feeling. And then, the etheric body, that's very, very close, the light body, very close to the body. And then the physical body. How does this apply to health and healing? Well, Hanna told us that you could catch thought, so first it starts as a thought. They don't like me, and now I feel bad, and now my stomach hurts. Okay, so it went from a thought to an emotion to a physical ailment. So Hanna said that you could catch a physical disease starting to manifest out in the auric field up to 2 years prior to it manifesting in the physical body, which is the power of being able to have some of these healing modalities and being able to detect energies, whether it's with a biofeedback device or a pendulum or your intuition or whatever, or maybe even you didn't detect it, maybe it just got cleared from something. I'm sure that people get cleared of all kind of non-beneficial energies by listening to beautiful music. That's why I love music so much. Or looking at a beautiful scene. So the aura and the information field. So the field in and around a person or thing has information. And this field is intelligent. It sends and receives signals. So you know how you'll just see somebody, I like the kind of graphic of the Charlie Brown character Pigpen, where everywhere he went, there was this like cloud of dust around him. Haven't you been around a person that no matter, they might have just taken a shower and gotten all dressed up, but they walk into the room and stink follows them, and it stinks sort of on an energetic level. Well, or the reverse, where somebody, maybe they're out there, didn't just take a shower, they just rolled out of bed, but they just smell like roses, and there's just something about them that just makes everybody feel better. And that's because in the field is intelligent, it has information, and it's sending and receiving signals all the time. If we're manifesting constantly some condition in our life or the same type of people, so this is recently something that I became aware of in my own life, that I kept manifesting a certain disposition in a person. And I was like, well, somewhere in me is either that disposition or some signal sending out that says, I need somebody to come and have a problem with me. Okay, so I have to be responsible for the signals and the information that's in my energy field. Maybe it came from my great-great-grandpappy. I don't know. But I'm responsible for what's showing up in my field now. And if I keep getting the same thing over and over again, I have to imagine I have something to do with it, and that I need to work on myself and clearing this and clearing it out of the field, because the field is intelligent. So as I said before, Hanna said that we could detect a distorted signal or a disease process up to 2 years prior to it manifesting. And then she said that we could clear the energy so that it didn't manifest. So how do you clear the energy? Many things. Prayer, number one, but even by your intention. The Native Americans use sage, smudging, and things like that. There are many different ways to clear energy on many different levels, emotional, spiritual, etc. And again, I'm just doing a broad brush right now for this webinar to just hit the hot spots of Hanna's work. And at the end of the webinar, I'm going to be telling you some more that we have planned, but I would also like to know what areas you might like to know more about. So if you could sort of be ready to, chat us on that, or chat now, and that'd be fine. So, I'll point to one of the best ways to clear energy is through the power of the spoken word. And our words have the power to destroy or to heal. They can uplift, or they, could literally kill someone. So We spend a lot of time. I spend a lot of time with my children, um, trying to impress on them. Because many of you know this, I have little children, 10-year-olds, and a big one, but I don't have to worry with her. She's gotten that already. But with the little ones, that how much of a difference it matters, what, not just what comes out of your mouth, but what we're actually thinking and reading and writing. So there are many different subtle energy field tools and techniques. I use a number of them, as I've mentioned already: light therapy, biofeedback, biogenesis, music, you name it. You all, essential oils, you all have your tools and techniques, but the idea is to clear the non-beneficial energies out of the field so we can have a happy life. There are some photographs I put in here as I was preparing the webinar yesterday, and I was like, there's some pictures that nobody's ever seen except us here, and I thought you all would just probably love this. Especially those of you all that knew Hannah. But here she is in action. This was the very last seminar of her life. It was in Madison, Wisconsin, and there she is. In her right hand's the pendulum, and she's touching the woman that you see there, and she's dowsing her. And I'm holding up the microphone so she can talk to the crowd. Here she is using a pendulum, dowsing over food. So if you're not familiar with dowsing, you can measure the energy. If this food is good, is it good for me? Is it good? Is it good if, and you can measure how much of it would be good to eat. Now on lettuce, I mean, nobody needs to do that, but, recently we had this big scare with the lettuce being contaminated, the romaine lettuce. So it would be helpful to be a dowser to see, is this lettuce safe? That's a practical way of using it. Here's another example of dowsing. Now this is me in my younger year with the blonde hair in the center there. And we would put groups of remedies out on the table and hold a person's left hand, using the pendulum over the remedy to see if their body and their energy field was matching the vibration of the remedy, which would mean that it would probably support their body, giving it the information that it needed to heal itself. That's a practical use of dowsing. So Hannah used many different techniques to help a person, but as I said before, she was a master herbalist, and her combinations are still as vital today as they were when she died. And so they're called Kroger herb products. And that was one of the ways, and the homeopathic line. But she used prayer, of course, always. She was always using prayer and using the name of Jesus, and encouraging a person, speaking to their mind about, of course, they were going to be well. And she was really someone who threw out that hope all the time. She felt like you really had to give people hope that they could be well and that their body is brilliant. So she used herbal remedies, homeopathic or vibropathic remedies, body alignment techniques, which we'll talk about in a little bit, spiritual clearing or depossession work, energy tools, or she called them her gadgets. And she's got a lot of different gadgets, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. She used food, she used cleanses, she used any technique she could use to help a person have a better life. Here's some packaging of her vibropathic line. There's more than 150 vibropathics. They are inexpensive. And I think if you compare, her herbal combinations are generally around $14.95 or $14.99 retail, which it's hard to find any supplement, any herbal combination on the market at that price point. And the vibropathics at $11.99 retail. Again, hard to find that price point, but she had a philosophy that it didn't matter how good your products were. If people couldn't afford them, they didn't have access to them. So it wouldn't help. So Her company has always tried to keep their products at a reasonable price. This is just a little snapshot of our Energy Events website, energyevents.us. Some of us were used to finding us by my name, Ginger Bowler, or energyeventsglobal.com. All of that still points to this, but it's an easier name to remember, energyevents.us. And some of you all watching this recording or live, or your health food store owners, your health practitioners already. And so, of course, you already carry the products. You don't need to buy them from us retail, but there are some people or some of your customers, because you may be sending some of your customers to see our webinar. Just make sure that, tell them to come back to you to make your purchase if you're sending your customers to us and you're a health food store, okay, or practitioner. Alrighty. So I thought yesterday when I was putting together the webinar that I would show you as many photographs as I could, because I do believe pictures are worth 1,000 words. So here, Hanna, here's at that same seminar in Madison. It's me on the right in my former years, and there's Hanna using a little one of her gadgets called a blood clot board. Now, what she's doing, she's got a pendulum in her right hand. You can't see it but she does. In her left hand, she's holding this little board, and she's scanning the woman's body to see if she can pick up the energy of congested or clotted blood. And if she can, she's going to either leave the little board there, but Hanna was way too impatient for that. She would just put it there, and then she would command the clot out in the name of Jesus. So, and there's a couple of extra words she says up in there. You can come to one of our classes, and we get deeper into all of this. But let's talk about that blood clot board. What's in that? It's got some other name now. I don't know the new name of this little board, but all that's in this board is blackstrap molasses and a magnet. So Hanna got tired of telling us to get a bottle of blackstrap molasses and wrap a magnet on it and scan the person. Now, I did this back 30 years ago, but my fellow students, classmates, they weren't doing that. And so Hanna had her family, make these little boards. And so the theory here is that the iron in the clotted blood will be attracted to the iron in the blackstrap molasses. So when we understand energy, and the rule number, if you looked at my energy model, the whole context for understanding energy is everything is energy. And rule number 1 is like energy attracts like energy. So the like energy of the iron in the clotted blood is attracted to the like energy in the blackstrap molasses. And then you could use the pendulum. In this case, after you figured out where to put the blood clot board, you would use the pendulum actually as an instrument to move the energy and in effect to dissolve any of that congestion. So fascinating work. I know a lot of you all have played with that. And anyway, that's just one little picture of her working with one of her gadgets. I threw this in here because this is my energy model. I certainly do not have time to teach it today. You can go look at the webinar if you're not familiar with it, but I wanted to show you this because I always struggle to understand Hanna's, what did she mean by higher vibration? And it was this imaginary line that all these things that are good for us, as I'm putting examples on the screen, that's above this imaginary line, and the ultimate being God, the light. And people are not offended, Hanna said, if you talk about the light, but they might be offended if you use the name, the name that they're not comfortable with to talk about God, but they won't be offended if you talk about the light. So now I'm putting the different things that are a lack of movement or energy flow. And so we have things that are the light and the darkness. So the idea here, very simply, is we want to do all those things that are above the line. We don't want to participate in those things that are below the line, because happy and healthy is a function of above the line. And when we're not having a good time, certainly something, and when we're miserable and sick, something on some level is not working. Does this mean that people with diseases are full of darkness? No, it does not. They could be a saint and have a disease, but it means that in the physical form, there's some non-beneficial energies that could use clearing to bring it into the light, so to speak. So if you think about it, we're always speaking energy. We say, oh, lighten up, or that uplifted me. What does that mean? Literally up into the higher vibrations of light. Or she drained me. What does that mean? Literally being drained of the light and feeling like you're below the line. Okay. There are also 16 rules for understanding energy, and they're in this book, my book, Listening and Communicating with Energy. So mostly this book is about me, my relationship with Hanna, but it's also about me chasing healers around the planet to try to understand what they knew that I didn't know, and what was Hanna seeing that I couldn't see, the energy models in here, as well as the 16 rules for understanding energy. So other webinar topics for Hanna's work that I am planning to do in the near future, a whole webinar just on her herbal combinations. What was she thinking when she put these different combinations together? They're incredible. Another one is about the vibropathic remedies. My children were raised with vibropathic remedies, the 5 main ones being salmonella for food poisoning, Sina for little parasites, Ledum for kidneys, and staph if when my daughter has pimples, she uses a staph remedy. And so, but there's 150 or so or more of them. So a whole webinar on that. I want to do a whole webinar on just the gadgets. I love the gadgets because you can use them on the body, even though they were made usually not to be used on the body. They were made to be used maybe with water, putting your water on the water revitalizer, or the food on the Soma board, the different kinds of gadgets. We've discovered all these different ways you can use them on the body. So we'll go over that in the gadget webinar. The body self-alignment, there are many different techniques that you can learn to do yourself, for yourself and your family, and tailbone setting, setting the hips, the clavicle, collarbone, lifting dropped or prolapsed organs, doing carpal tunnel for those people with repetitive movement, that these bones in here and the elbows and the shoulders get affected. A simple whiplash procedure that's really simple, setting the brain stem, and others. So that would be another one. Also, I want to do one just on the Dr. Hulda Clark cleanses, because a lot of people, they're not into dowsing, or they're not into doing a saliva sample or some other way to figure out what they need. They just want to just do all the cleanses. Let's just go through the 4 steps. And so we'll go through that, and it's very powerful work. She was a student of Hanna's work, and I still teach her 4 cleanses all the time. And then one on the spiritual causes, how to recognize and clear negative energies, entities, and darkness or dark forces. So anyway, that's our webinar. Here's our contact information. We are in Broomfield, Colorado. You can call or text us at the phone number listed, 720-331-4385. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. And are there any questions there are no questions right now? So we thank you for being on the webinar, and visit us for another one coming up soon.